This is Modern Photo Solutions, helping you find modern solutions for life's photographic journey. Taking you from photo overwhelm to photo fabulous in just a few taps. Your story matters. It's time to start telling it. Hey everyone, welcome to Modern Photo Solutions. I'm Steph Clay. Thank you so much for being here with me today. I appreciate you sharing some of your time with me. Today I'm going to be sharing with you how I was able to document my daughter's mission. As I've noted before on podcast, she just returned from her mission for our church. She was gone almost 19 months, just 1 week short of 19 months, and she is back home. She's been home for a week now as I'm recording this, and it is wonderful to have her home. I had several people ask me on social media and in our Facebook group for the Heart of Photo Fabulous class how I went about documenting her mission. And so I thought I would share today the details of how I did that. So the first thing that you need to know and understand about my daughter is that she does not like technology at all. Her preference would be, she's said before, her preference would be for everyone to carry around typewriters. Yes, because she likes that form of communication better than anything that's new and technological. So I knew that my plan for her to get photos to me and details to me about what she was doing on her mission needed to be super simple. And in case you aren't familiar with the rules, I've talked about it before on the podcast, but if this is your first time jumping in on this podcast, then you probably haven't heard me talk about it yet, and you may not be familiar with it. But the missionaries for our church, the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, are only allowed to email once a week. And they have about 2 hours where they can email, and they can send emails to their families and send pictures as well. And then we also can Skype with them twice a year, sorry. We were able to Skype with her 3 times while she was on her mission. And so once on Mother's Day and once on Christmas, they are able to Skype with their family for about 50 minutes, 45 minutes, around there. And people always ask me why the rules are that way. And the biggest reason is because they work hard. These missionaries work so hard, and they are asked to leave their family and their friends and everything back home, their whole life back home, and dedicate this time period to serving God and teaching people about Jesus Christ. And so any more time than that is a bit of a distraction. And sometimes I have learned even that little bit can be somewhat distracting. And so it's really important for these missionaries to just have limited time that they can communicate with family. And yes, it is hard. It's brutal for the moms and the family left back at home. It's not as often as hard for the missionaries because they are so busy. But okay, so before she left, I had got her a camera that I knew would be super easy for her to use. It had a forward-facing lens so that she could take selfies, and I knew that she's been taking selfies since before they were a thing with her very first camera that we got her when she was 10 or 12. And so I knew that that would be important for her. The model of camera that I got her is no longer on the market, and so I'm not even going to include that information, and that's not what she ended up using. So she did send photos from the training center where she was there for a couple of weeks, 10 days actually, I think. She did send photos from that camera from there. I only heard from her once the whole time she was in the training center. They had her in leadership right away when she got there, and so she was really busy, and I only heard from her once, and I got a whole bunch of photos that one time. And so then when she got into the mission field, she served in the Florida Jacksonville mission, and it is an iPad mission. As a side note, these are no longer called iPad missions anymore. They have a new name. She told me what it was. I can't remember what it is, but most missions are now using Samsung tablets, And the missionaries purchase these before they leave on their mission. With her, when she got into the mission, she was issued an iPad, but this is something that the missionaries are asked to supply on their own now before they leave on their mission, and it is a Samsung iPad, or tablet, sorry, not an iPad, a Samsung tablet. And from what I have seen of the photos from the Samsungs, they are amazing. The camera is really, really, really good quality on the Samsungs, and she said the same thing from all of the photos that she saw from the missionaries that were on Samsungs as well. And so if I had a missionary that was going into a technology mission where they would be using tablets, I would just have that be their main camera. I wouldn't even send them with another camera in addition to that tablet. Not all missions have tablets though, and not all of them have this capability. So if I weren't, then I would find an inexpensive, small, compact camera that is easy for them to operate, that they'll be able to operate, and I definitely would spend some time going through that with them. And I had her practice sending me pictures from her camera, because I knew if she didn't know how to do it, she wouldn't do it, because she hates technology so bad she wouldn't figure out how to do it. So her first week in the mission, we did get photos that were emailed directly off of the camera, because that was one of the capabilities that camera had. And then that was it. After that, it was the iPad. And as you probably know, iPads do not have very good cameras at all, especially the forward-facing camera. It's really bad. But hey, they were pictures, and so I was happy with that. And I knew that trying to convince her not to use it was not going to happen. It was either going to be iPad photos or no photos. So I chose iPad photos reluctantly. I wasn't very happy about that, but you get what you can have sometimes. And so that's definitely what I could have, because it was just way too easy for her. So every kid is different and every mission is different. And so you'll definitely have to figure out what will work for you and for your kid. And this is the same, even if you don't have a child going on a mission. If you have a child going away for college, I think the same thing holds true. Talk to them about how you're going to get photos so that you can document their time away from home. I think that if your child is going away to college, I know for a fact, because I had her away at college as well. When she first went away to college, she was about 1,200 miles away from us, and she would text me photos a lot, and I would ask her questions about, what does your dorm look like? What does this look like? What does that look like? And send me a photo. And she did a pretty good job. And then I also set it up so that her iPhone automatically uploaded, or that she shared, her iPhone automatically uploaded to Dropbox, and then she shared that camera uploads folder with me, so I have access to it in my Dropbox as well. You could also set up photo sharing on a shared album on your iPhone that they can upload photos to, and you could also share something in Google Photos. For her, texting me the photos was the easiest way for her to get stuff to me, and that's, she would tell me about things going on around campus that way as well. So back to the mission, and talking, and even with your kids away at college, talking to them and figuring out a plan ahead of time is, I think, really important to do, so that they know that you want to see photos and that you want to see what they're doing and their environment and the things that they're involved in, the different activities, all of that kind of stuff, the people that they're working with, so that you can document that for them. Most kids really do love having their story told. And if they know that you're going to do something with their photos, they're typically a lot more willing to cooperate and send you those photos. I've found that to be true in my family. I have a friend who has a son that is serving currently in Colombia on his mission. And after he had been out about 6 months, she told me that they had not received any photos from him at all, and that something was wrong with the camera connecting to the computer. The computers wouldn't recognize his camera. Instantly, I knew that the computers in Columbia are most likely older computers, and so they wouldn't recognize newer camera models when you just plug them in. Sometimes you have to actually install drivers for those kinds of things. And so I told her that she needed to send him a memory card reader that would plug into a USB port. And so she did that, and she said the next email they got lots and lots of pictures, and they've received pictures almost every email since then. So knowing the part of the world where your child is going and what kind of technology you're going to be working with definitely helps. I sent my daughter not only with a camera, but with a card reader that would plug into a USB port. And I showed her how to work that, as well as a card reader that would plug into her iPad, and she could just pull photos off of that. I wanted to make it as simple for her as possible. And like I said, just sending them directly from the iPad, taking photos with the iPad turned out to be the easiest thing for her. But I definitely would send my child, again, even though she didn't use them, I would send them with those kinds of card readers as well as extra memory cards. I have heard of a lot of different ways to do this. I have heard of moms who sent a memory card and then told their child to mail it home to them once it got full. I know my daughter well enough to know that that was never going to happen. She would never have gone to the post office to get a special envelope, or even if I sent her prepaid envelopes, which I did, it wasn't going to happen. I knew that before she headed out to the field, so I knew that I needed to have a different plan than that for her. She used the Physical Project Life to document her own story before she left on her mission. She filled 2 complete 12 by 12 albums. Doing that, she would order her photos off of Groovebook. She really liked being able to order the photos off of her phone and then putting them into the Project Life albums. And that's how she wanted me to document her mission, was with the Physical Project Life, which I agreed to do at that time because I thought Physical Project Life is easy enough. I can surely do it that way. But I got behind really fast. And I didn't like how I had to use the same page design for the front and the back of the page. And I found that I was wasting and just filling the back side with maybe one photo and a bunch of filler cards, because the size and orientation of the photos wouldn't work with the page design that I had used for the front. So I had to abandon the Physical Project Life in order to save my sanity and in order to get some things done. I got behind during this time while I was trying to figure out what to do, because I was intending to use the Physical Project Life, but it took more time and I had to drag out all the supplies, blah, blah, blah. All of that stuff, the whole reason I left physical memory keeping in the very beginning. So I should have known that that wasn't going to work for me, but I was delusional, I guess, at the time. So I decided to switch and just started using the Project Life app, and that seemed to work really well, and I was able to crank through a lot of things, and I got all caught back up. But then when my daughter started going through difficult things on her mission, it was harder for me to document her mission. And missions are supposed to be hard. They really force these kids to grow up fast, and if they're done right and if they're done well, it forces them to grow up, and they are hard. And I knew that going into it, but I didn't know how it would affect me and impact me knowing when my kid was going through hard things. And one of those ways that it affected me was it made it difficult for me to document about stuff at the time. I'm the kind of person that I can look back, looking back, it's easier on hard things. It's easier for me to figure out what I learned from it and document that way. It's a lot harder for me to talk about it when the scars are gaping and open, the wounds are gaping and open. But once they're scars and it's in the past, it's easier for me. And it's not like it was traumatic for me to have her going through hard things, but it was emotional. Anytime you know that your kid is struggling and you have limited communication, even though you know it's good for them and they're growing up, it can be emotional. So I did get behind when but this is kind of my process for how I pulled information together. When she sent emails with photos, she would usually write one sentence about each photo or a set of photos, just letting me know what was included. And that's something that she just did on her own. I didn't have to ask her to do it. I'm really grateful that she did that. And I totally would have asked her to do that if she didn't, because I needed to be able to know what was in the photos. And I would also copy bits of the text from her emails and include and paste those onto the Project Life page so that there was a little more information about things going on during that week. There were usually 1 or 2 Mondays a month where we didn't get any photos at all, but then the next Monday would be just a ton of photos quite often. Once in a while, we would only get one photo, and so it was hard for me to stay current because of the way photos were coming in, and I would think that I was done, and then more photos would come in from that time period. And so letting things stack up for a little while definitely seemed to work better. And then her mission president and his wife have a blog where they would add stuff to the blog, photos to the blog too. And so I would need to go in and get those. And sometimes that took longer. The photos being posted wasn't immediate for sure. But she did come home to about half of her mission completed and in an album. So I still have half of her mission that I need to finish. She loved what I did get done, and she has enjoyed going through it. She's excited for me to finish the rest of it. As I was going through this and towards the end of her mission, I really had a lot of questions on maybe she would prefer this or maybe she would prefer that. And as I've talked to her since she's been home, I definitely was on the right track and handling the things the way that she was okay with. And really, she just wants it done. She doesn't care how it looks. Her dad did suggest that maybe I take all of the emails that she sent home and print them in an 8.5 by 11 book through Blurb. And I asked her about that, and she actually liked it the way I was doing, which I was just printing them out and including them in the 12 by 12 album, but in an 8.5 by 11 page protector. So I would have photos, a left and a right side, page, and then in between would be the email. And she really liked that. She really has liked having that information there that she can go back through and read a little bit as she's looking at the photos in the album. I know that some people would want it to be all the same size, and she's kind of a perfectionist, so it surprised me that she didn't want them in a book, but she does really like the way that it's done. She likes having all of the photos and the information all right there together. So going backwards, and trying to finish these last 9 months, there's a lot, weekly emails. So 9 times 4, that's a lot of pages and information and photos that I need to sort through and get documented. And I have come up with a really great project management system that I am using while I work on the rest of her book. And I'm really super excited about how slick it is and how well it works. But it's not something that I can describe in a podcast and have you be able to pick it up and run with it. So I will be creating a mini course on this system and this process, and have it done hopefully by mid-May. It'll be much shorter than my big course, my Heart of Photo Fabulous course. It'll most likely just be 1, maybe 2 modules with a few lessons in each module that will lay out the whole process and system. And this is something that isn't just good for missions. It's great for missions, but it's also great for any project where you're working backwards, trying to get things done. While I was current and working on pages, I would download photos directly from her emails onto my phone and create those pages right away that week. And it worked out for the most part, really well until I started getting photos coming in later on pages that I had already finished. But that worked out really well for a little while to be able to do it that way. So I guess the biggest piece of advice is to remain adaptable as you're working on this to the needs and the timing and how things work with your child. Definitely how I ended up isn't how I thought I was going to start. And I thought I was going to be able to finish the whole album, and that didn't work out either. But I asked her if she wanted to have input on some of these pages, and she said it's completely overwhelming to her, the amount of stuff that would need to be documented. She's grateful that I am doing it. She doesn't want to feel like she needs to have a part in it because it's just too much for her in her life right now. So as she looked through those books and as she went through her room after she got home and was looking at her old Physical Project Life albums, she determined that she doesn't want to use Physical Project Life anymore. And she wants to figure something else out instead. She is possibly going to try the app. She doesn't know for sure. I did introduce her to Google Photos because while they're on their mission, their access to technology is very limited and they only have specific apps that she could use on her iPad. And so she had never seen Google Photos. She knew that I had a class on it and was working on that. And I did introduce that to her last night and she was really excited. She loved it. She really loved it. And she kept saying, amazing, it's amazing. And she really, really loved the animations that it would create. I just tapped on her photo in the people tab and showed her how it has all of the photos of her going back to about 2004. And she spent a couple hours going through all of those photos and reminiscing and talking about different memories and how things had happened. And it was a lot of fun to be able to do that. And she was so excited. She kept saying, I haven't ever seen these photos. I wondered if I had photos of that. And so I feel bad because even though I am a passionate memory keeper and documenter, I don't have my kids' whole life story done. And I don't know that I ever will, but at least now they have access to all of those photos and can view them all if that's all they do. But I hope to be able to go through and document even more of their stories going forward because the Project Life app is just so fast to be able to get stuff done on. I thought it would be fun to hear from a couple of other moms about how they are documenting their kids' missions as well. I am grateful that they were willing to take some of their time to record little clips and send them over to me to share some ideas with you as well.
Hi, Steph, and hi, Sam. Welcome home. This is Katie Nelson, and Steph asked me if I would pop on the show and with a little recording, so this is a different way to do it, and just talk about some of the ways that I'm documenting my daughter's mission. My daughter is in Iowa and will be home in a month, so we are just at the tail end of her service. And of course, every missionary is different. Every mission is different, even though they all have basically the same rules. But we've had a couple of experiences that are probably different than Sam's, just based on where my daughter is serving and what her mission is like. So my daughter's name is Riley, and she, like I said, is in Iowa and has been in many rural areas and all the areas she's been in. She's not had an iPad. Some missionaries have iPads where they can use those to teach their lessons and to send emails, which they just only do on their P-Day. But Riley has not had one of those. That's not part of her mission. And so she goes on her P-Day, her preparation day, and goes to the public library with her companion and sends her emails from there. So not only does she have the limit of a time set aside for emailing family and friends, but sometimes she's at the mercy of what's going on in the library. And if other people are waiting to use the computers, that can cut short her time. Also, when P-Day falls on a holiday, like Martin Luther King Day, then she can't email me on that day. But her mission president has been very nice to say, go the next day and do an email time so that you can send your families a letter. So I have heard from her each week through email that way. And I'm sure Steph have talked about this a little bit. You don't hear any more than that other than your 2 phone calls in the year on Mother's Day and Christmas. So you can imagine those emails are pretty precious. And of course, anytime a photo can be attached to one, it's like Christmas. It feels wonderful. I wanted to talk about what kind of camera she's been using. I have been able to share tips and back and forth with Steph, and we've been able to help each other out, which has been a lot of fun. And so as both of our daughters were preparing to go, we were both looking at cameras to send with them, and we ended up sending the same camera with each of our daughters. So I'm interested to hear what Sam's experience was with this camera. But I bought Riley a Samsung Smart Wi-Fi digital camera, and we did not have a good experience with it, unfortunately. She had a hard time figuring out how to connect to any Wi-Fi to send the photos that way. She's fairly technologically savvy, but it was a little different once she was out in the field to figure that out. So I told her, well, don't worry about that. Just, send me the SD cards or attach photos to email, whatever can work. I sent her with a cord to connect the camera to a computer, and she, knew how to insert an SD card, of course, too. So her first area was pretty rural, and I don't know what the technology was like, but she didn't really send a lot of photos through email. She mostly would wait and get a bunch on an SD card and then mail that home. And she usually knew it was time to mail it home because I would mail her an SD card that was blank and kind of put a little hint on there that I wanted to see some pictures. The first batch that came home, they were all a little bit blurry. And I noticed that with the next batch too. And I got kind of worried about the quality of the photos. I mentioned something to her and then sent her my point and shoot camera that I had been using. It was an older Canon PowerShot that I really loved, and told her to try that. Well, sure enough, once she switched to that, her photos got a lot better, which I figured would be the case because she's a pretty good photographer. So I was surprised to see so many blurry pictures. She usually gets the photos to me in batches on SD cards, but sometimes emails them. She's been better about emailing them toward the end of her mission. We had an experience where my friend's daughter was serving in Hawaii, and she had only sent her SD card home every few months, and she lost one of her cards and was devastated because she'd lost a big chunk of photos from her mission. So, of course, that spooked me a little bit, and I wrote to Riley and said, please be sure you're sending those SD cards home regularly, or you're emailing me photos regularly. I don't want you to lose these. I know that would be really hard. And she has been better about that since then. Now, Steph will probably laugh because I have been a little bit of a complainer about Riley not sending as many photos as I would like. Of course, I'm the scrapbook lady. I have high expectations for photos. But it's funny because she took a lot of photos before she left, and she really hasn't taken a ton of pictures on her mission. I don't know if that's just, not something that she's thinking about, which is understandable. But I've had to send her a couple of lists a couple of times, just giving her some suggestions of things she could take pictures of, dropping some hints. So it's funny. I've been a little surprised that I have not gotten as many pictures as I thought I would get. She seems to be picking it up a little bit towards the end of her mission, but I don't have a lot of photos. I don't have photos of the towns or areas that she's been in, just mostly some selfies with her companions and a few pictures that people on her mission have sent to me. Those have been the greatest treasures. Sometimes, whether they're a person who's a member of our same church or not, if they have fed dinner to the missionaries or something like that, sometimes they will take a picture of the missionaries and send it to their mom, which I highly recommend. It's such a wonderful treat. That's only happened a few times, but it has been a treasure, and I love it. I love to see those photos come in from other people. It really makes me happy. And she actually hasn't had a lot of those experiences as far as being fed a lot in members' homes, probably because it's a more rural area where there aren't as many members and they're pretty spread out. But all the people she's met in Iowa, and she was even in Missouri for a little while, they've all just been the best people. She just tells me Midwest is best, and those are the best people in the world, which I believe. um, so Steph wanted me to talk about my process for how I'm documenting her mission. And it's been a tricky one for me to figure out. She is not super forthcoming with the details. She doesn't tell me a lot about what's going on as far as, this is what we're doing and where we're going and who we're meeting. I'm not getting a lot of names when I do get photos. It's a little hard to document. I had this unrealistic expectation that she would be sending me emails and information and I would be scrapping it as she did so. And by the time she came home, I would have a book all ready to print for her just to have as some wonderful memento of her mission. Well, that has not happened, and that's okay. I'm all right with it. I have been struggling with what to put together and how to do it, what kind of format to use. I love to do photo books. I do Adorama Pics photo books where I put all my layouts in it. In one of those books, I do a lot of my scrapping through the Project Life app. I do some digitally in Photoshop Elements. And I've only put together just maybe 4 or 5 layouts of her whole mission because I haven't felt like I had a complete enough story for anything to call it a layout. I've done that. I'm going to try and put together some more collages and layouts and put them in a paper album. It's kind of an inexpensive paper album I picked up at Hobby Lobby. And I'm going to put them in that and have those printed when she gets home and not worry too much about it. If she wants to do more, I'm happy to do that. And we'll work together on it. And I'll be happy to make her a photo book or a bigger album, whatever she wants. One thing I have done that has worked really well is I've kept track of all of her emails back and forth to us, to our family members, and she sends home her letters about every 3 or 4 months. She'll send home a box of letters. She put some in a bundle and says, don't read these, and that's fine, I don't. And then the others, she tells me I can, keep them organized. So I've slipped those letters in with the emails. I've learned a long time into our mission, I wish I would have thought of this sooner, that I should be printing on both sides of the page when I print out the emails because we were getting thick books. Even though she's not writing a lot, just the sheer volume of what happens over 18 months adds up. So I have gone back and reprinted them as double-sided to cut down on space, and that has really helped. So I have binders, and in those binders are the emails, and I put the pictures that she sent with them with the email. I keep a family blog that is password protected, and each week I put an update from her that she sends or that I compile from her emails, and I put some pictures, and I've printed out those blog entries and put them in that book as well. So that's more of a record for her. I doubt she's going to sit down with a friend and pull out those binders and say, here's my mission, because it's got all of her letters and the back and forth between all of us. So that's more of a record for her. I don't consider that a scrapbook to share with others. I consider it more like a journal for her. And I'm happy that that is going to be a complete record for her to have. And of course, there's probably letters that I won't have by the time she gets home. She'll bring things home with her and I'll have to slip those in, but it should be fairly complete. So that's what I'm doing. I know that was long-winded, but I am a long-winded person, so I don't know what to do about that. And I'm glad to be able to share this with you guys. I'll talk to you soon. Bye.
Thank you, Katie. I appreciate that so much. One thing that was interesting for Katie and I as we have compared notes along this journey is that we did think that her daughter would be sending home tons and tons of photos because she was such a big photographer before she left. And we figured that I would hardly see any photos at all because my daughter wasn't a big photo taker before she left on her mission. And it turned out to be the exact opposite. I got a lot of photos and Katie didn't get quite as many. And it's just the difference in their personalities and how they dealt with those situations. You can never predict what your kids are going to do and how they will respond with things. We can try, and sometimes we're right, but this definitely proved to me that you just never know. All right, we also have some little bits from Chelle Ludwinski, who has been on the show before as well. She's had 2 girls that have served missions, and she's sharing a little bit. I believe it's with her daughter that just recently returned, and she has some information for us as well.
Hi, Steph. The camera that my daughter used while she was on her mission, it's been 3 years since I bought it for her, and we were plenty worried about her being able to keep track of it. One of her lovely habits is that she loses things. And so we walked into Best Buy and we just picked one that was in about the like $50 to $75 range. And that was what I sent with her. I was a lot more fussy about the camera card. I made sure that I got the biggest camera card I could for it because I wasn't sure how she was going to be able to download it or if she'd be able to just send it back to me. So we got 2 of them so that she could send one back and keep one and see if we could make that work. Getting photos from my daughter proved to be kind of difficult. I had wanted to spend time before she left making sure that she understood how to get the photos from her camera downloaded onto her computer to be able to send them. But in the days before she left, that just didn't make the top of the list. And so she knew how to plug a camera into a computer. She'd done that in her photography class in school. But she wasn't able to get it to work during the time while she was in the missionary training center during those 10 days to 2 weeks. And so I didn't get any pictures until after she'd been out in the mission field. When she went to Texas, then her companion kind of showed her what she was doing. But very shortly after she got there, she sent me an email asking for a card reader to make it easier. And so I had a card reader shipped to her so that she would be able to send them. And at that time, really, she still didn't send me all of her pictures at all. She just would attach 1 or maybe 2 to the emails that she sent me once a week. And that was all I was getting. And then after she had been on her mission for about 7 months-ish, she transferred to a new area, and I touched base with her new companion's mom on Facebook, and I saw her companion's mom post something about the scrapbook page she was doing with the photos. And I messaged her and said, "How did you get so many photos? I only get 1 per week. That's not enough to scrapbook." And she said that she said that her daughter was using OneDrive. And so I checked it out, and I'd asked her a few more questions. Most missionaries are limited. They don't spend a lot of time on the internet. In particular, Natalie's mission president, the man that was responsible for all the missionaries in that area, had approved them using OneDrive as one of the websites that they could go to. So I immediately set up OneDrive and sent her the login information. And then her companion taught her how to upload her photos. So starting after she'd been out for about 7 months, well, it took her a month or so to get it to work. So after she'd been out for about 8 months, then all of them appeared in OneDrive. And at first, she didn't want me to see them because she wanted to tell me about all the photos. So I told her that she could just go ahead and upload them, but at least that way they'd be safe if something happened to her camera. That was one of my biggest worries. But it wasn't too long after that she just said, "I don't have time to attach photos, Mom. Just go into OneDrive, find one, and attach a photo to the email so that you can send it out to all of the friends and relatives that we sent her emails to." And so we were using OneDrive. If I were to do it again, I would definitely set up something. I probably would choose a camera that had Wi-Fi capabilities. I had other friends who had missionaries who each time their missionary came into a Wi-Fi zone that they'd been set up with, like near the church house, the building, or even some of them would work at a McDonald's or somewhere else, then the pictures would automatically upload and the parents would see them at that point. And I was always a little jealous of that. I also would make sure, that was one of the things on my list, is if I ever do this again, we need to spend the time to make sure that she understands how to upload those photos before she leaves. During the time while Natalie was on her mission, I did a little bit of documenting. I just for fun took some of her pictures, and if I had a kit that I had made that fit with it, I would put something together. And so I might have had 7 or 8 layouts that I'd put together before it came really close to time for her to get home. I did, however, keep all of the emails that she sent. She sent an email every week, and they were fairly long emails. She'd send a short one just to me, but she'd send a long one that we forwarded to all the friends and family. And I kept all of those, and I copied and pasted them into just a Word document, actually. And I put the one picture that she attached each week, I'd put in with that. And I gave that document to her, or gave her access to it through Google Docs when she got home, so that she could go through and see if there's anything she wanted to add to it that she remembered, or anything that it said in there that she changed her mind and decided she didn't want to include. We kind of had a code that if she was writing something to me that she didn't want all of the friends and relatives that we were sending the letter to, if she didn't want that included, she would just put little star and parentheses around it. And so I thought I had removed all of those, but just in case, I wanted her to proofread that document. And then our intention was to go ahead and use that as some of the storytelling in the whole document. And then shortly after she got home, I went through all of the photos and just started using Project Life. And I used Becky Higgins has on the, okay, I don't know if I have the terms correct here. You might have to help me on this. The Digital Project Life has a missionary kit. And so I used the Sister Missionary Kit in Digital Project Life, and that was how I was putting them together. And I just left some spots blank, or I would put journaling cards in some of the spots. But I didn't add any of the journaling on it, and I completed them that way. And then I would, I'd export them and save them in that format. And then I would either text or email them to her and ask her to add the journaling to it. She could just write or go ahead and just talk into her phone of what it was that she wanted to have for the journaling or the storytelling on that page, and then send it back to me. And then I would go ahead back into my app and add it in. And we did that for the first dozen pages or so. And then we decided it would be easier if she got the Project Life app, and instead of exporting it and letting her look at it and add the journaling, if she could go ahead and add the journaling on her own. That part has worked better because she can add the story on her own, but I care more about it getting done. So it happens more if I go ahead and export it and send it to her and say, hey, can you send me the story that you want to go with this one? But also what we're finding as we are 3 or 4 months into the 18-month mission, we're finding that really her stories come from those emails that she sent home each week. And I can almost predict what she's going to say. And so a couple of times I've just gone in and taken something from, I look at the dates on the photos that she sent. I find the letters that came home at about that time, and I can go ahead and kind of predict what she's going to say and put it in. And then she can go ahead and change anything or edit it at that point and let me know. So we've kind of gone to where I'm guessing from the letters that she sent home, and then she's making whatever changes she needs to at this point. Probably because her life at this point seems to be a little busier than mine, that seems to work best for us. I am not super organized in how we're going about this. Most of the time, I kind of know what I want on a page or what I want to put together before I start. But with this, because it's just ongoing, I kind of keep going until I have a page filled up, and then just go on with the rest of the story. As far as organizing the whole process, I know that this has a beginning and an end because it was the 18 months. And I started the project before your class. And so at that time, I would put her photos about a month at a time in Dropbox and download the ones I wanted. And it was a lot more complicated. Now that I've taken the class, I just go ahead and find the photos I want using the Google Photos app, and select them and favorite them. And then I just work on them till I have a layout filled with some journaling card spaces in. Sometimes the story is a little bit longer than I thought, and I go ahead and just adjust things. And I have a lot more filler cards in this project than my usual projects are much more photo heavy. And so I can add another filler card or take one out if I need to make it work. And we are just gradually working through it. It's just by, chronologically by date, with the stories going through. I would love to be able to add more of her whole emails that she sent home. And we've talked about different ideas of whether we should just print those in a separate book or whether we should try and include them or how exactly to do that. But really, as far as going back and forth between the two of us, it is just emails. I'll send them to her. I work on it for a while and I'll send a couple to her, and then within a week or two, she'll send them back to me, or I'll say, hey, did you finish that one? And I might have to send it again. And I'm just trying to keep, so there aren't a bazillion of them that are in process in my Project Life app.
Thank you so much, Chelle, for all of that information. I really appreciate it. Chelle was a little bit like Katie and my mentor, because she had a daughter that was just coming home, Natalie, right as Riley and Samantha were getting ready to head out. So it's been fun to go through this journey together and have Chelle kind of blazing the trail for all of us. So thank you, Katie and Chelle, and then also our daughters, Riley and Natalie and Samantha, for helping with this show today. I so appreciate it. It's a little bit different format, but it was the best way to get the most information out to our listeners so that they could benefit from it. And I think it worked fairly well. So thank you all for being here, and we will see you next time on Modern Photo Solutions.